Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today, for your weekly top 5 video, we are going over my top 5 most annoying ships to play against. These are 5 ships that are just absolutely, in my opinion at least, abysmal when you have to go up against them, especially when you have to go up against them, back to back to back, because all of these ships are quite popular at this moment. And, these are those ships where after you run into, like, your 4th game, where you've had to try and deal with one of these, you just go, you know what? That's enough boat game for today, right? I've done that a couple of times over the past couple of weeks, especially with one of these things. So that is the subject of today's top 5 video. So let's go ahead and get right on into it. Before we do, though, if you do find yourself enjoying this video, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. All that jazz helps us appeal our algorithm overlords, right? But anyway, let's go ahead and get going. Number 5 is the Italian battleship, the Cristoforo Colombo, the Tier 10, with the unique upgrade. Now, a normal Colombo, it's not really that bad to deal with them, in my opinion, in comparison to other, Tier 10 battleships. But if you find a Colombo running the unique upgrade, which most players playing Colombo nowadays absolutely are, it is just an absolute, it's a time trying to deal with a Colombo nowadays because, you see, the balancing factor for the Italian battleships is that their guns aren't all that accurate and they have a longer reload time. So while, yes, when their shells do eventually find their way to your ship, they are doing a quite sizable chunk of damage, they're not coming too often, and there's not too many salvos where a majority of the shells actually connect and you lose a huge swath of damage. But with the unique upgrade for the Colombo, well, you get a boost to the dispersion and you get a boost to the reload time, meaning that you have much more accurate salvos more often with the Colombo. And that is terrifying to play against because SAP does not care. It doesn't care about anything, really. Superstructure, bow, belt, well, unless it's like the flat, like the main belt, right? But upper belt, the spots that you're going to hit when you're throwing 16 shells at a target, it can pin them and it's going to do damage. How much damage? Well, if you're running a unique upgrade Colombo, it is not uncommon to get 20k salvos back to back to back to back because, yeah, especially if you're running the unique upgrade on top of the dispersion module, it's insane how much, just that little additional buff to the dispersion that the unique upgrade gives the Colombo, how crazy it is that little buff makes this much of a difference. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying trying to play against this thing, because there's truly nothing you can do, it feels like, in most cases. It's like, well, okay, I'll try to angle. Oh, I got 20k'd. Okay, let me see, maybe it's like AP. If I go broadside, we'll get some, I don't know, it'll miss or overpins or whatever, or, maybe it'll hit them with a belt instead. No, you still get 20k because they're just going to aim for your superstructure, the bits that they can pin anyway. And it's like the only thing you really do is run in a lot of cases. And of course, the Colombo has the exhaust smoke, so if you do start whittling them down, they're going to pop the exhaust smoke and run away. So, it's got some other things going for it that help out on the balance department. It's not outright broken, and it is only with the unique upgrade, so that's why it's at number 5. But man, Colombo is truly a scary thing nowadays, and it's kind of funny how it went from being like it's kind of an okay tier 10 to this monstrosity that we have nowadays. But anyway, going our way down now to number 4. We have the Tier 10 British battleship, the Conqueror. The Conqueror it's always been one of my more frustrating ships, especially after she first came out. If you guys have been around long enough, Conqueror was not very high. It did not have a, I did not have a high opinion of Conqueror when she was first released because, man, this thing, when it was originally released, the Citadel was below the waterline. The guns were, well, essentially the same, really. I mean, great HE, set fires left, right, and center, and it's got the super heal. So back in the day, before they raised the Citadel, this thing would sit there and just farm you down the entire match, and then like you would catch it broadside, and you'd be like, all right, now's the time for me to get my revenge, right? I'm going to blast this guy in his Citadel, remove half of his HP, and it didn't matter because the Citadel was so far underwater you needed a submarine to get to it, and those weren't in game yet. So back then, hella annoying to try and deal with. Today, still very annoying to try and deal with, but hey, you can at least Citadel the thing now. And what's really made the Conqueror more annoying today is the fact that we have so much more pressure put on DamageCon nowadays. You know, after they raised her Citadel and such, it was a period where it was like, okay, Conqueror, you know, still a little annoying to deal with, but at least I can Citadel the thing in return. And, you know, after I boop him in his Citadel, he's going to go dark for a little while, so, I can pop my DamageCon and whatever, get his fires out and kind of reposition and all that jazz. But nowadays, think about all the things we have to use DamageCon for now. I mean, fired and floodings, of course, but like the submarine pings now, the additional fires you're getting from like the Dutch cruisers and such, and the other, all the gimmicks that we've got that just, you have to use your DamageCon so much more now, or you have to save it so much more now, especially if you're in a game with a submarine and a Dutch cruiser and a CV, right, and a Conqueror. It's just not a great time. So while the Conqueror herself hasn't changed any bit, it's really annoying when you have to deal with a Conqueror on top of having to deal with like a U-2501 or a Baleo or whatever submarines on your flank, and then oh look, there's a Golden Lou as well, to where he set me on fire, the Thunderous set me on fire. Well, there's a submarine torpedoes, right? So you're trying to save your DamageCon for one of these three things, but you're having to deal with all of them in the same match. So that's really annoying. Trying to deal with a Conqueror on top of all of that, and Conqueror has always been a fairly popular ship simply for the fact that it's a really easy ship to bring in damage with because of the crazy HE. You get the British BBHE with the fantastic British HE Alpha with the great fire chance on top of that, so you can really just keep HE loaded the entire match and do very well, and you're still forcing players to pop their DamageCon and such, which again, that is crazy. That's probably a whole different video topic, how much more important DCP has gotten over the past couple of years, right? But anyway, you guys get what I'm saying there. But a really scary Conqueror player is one that actually knows how to push the 2 button, because now the Conqueror's AP is actually really good. You get that short fuse British BB AP. It's kind of like SAP before we had SAP, so it won't overpin, the extremities or the superstructure near as much as normal Battleship AP would. So the scary Conqueror players will use HE, and you think, okay, he's just a stupid Conqueror player who's going to spam HE at me the entire game, just farm me down. You go broadside and surprise, bro's got AP loaded, and then he blaps you for a solid 15k with the AP after hitting you with like 10k HE Alpha and 2 fires on top of that. So yeah, a good Conqueror player is really scary to try and deal with, but for me it's just the fact that again DCP has so much more on it nowadays, and Conqueror is still everywhere, so you have to deal with them on top of everything else. And that's also why it's at number 4, because it itself really doesn't have a crazy aspect about it anymore like it used to, where it had the great HE and the uncitadelableness and the 11.3 kilometer detection range. That's been balanced, but just the nature of the game today makes Conqueror a really annoying ship to see on the enemy team on top of everything else. Now, going way down now to number 3, we have the tier 10 Dutch light cruiser, the Utrecht. Now, the Utrecht, we talked about the Utrecht not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I've been playing it more so since then. But I didn't have to play it to know it's annoying as hell to play against, because, man, being a person that enjoys battleships and larger cruisers, Utrecht, I mean, God, they love seeing me pop up in the other team because, whew, I'm Dresden, and they're the U.S. Army Air Force, right? Man, the Dutch cruisers, when we got the Golden Luz line back in the day, that was one thing. Those airstrikes, at least they had a longer reload time. But man, the Utrecht's airstrikes, with the longer range, the shorter reload time, the essentially battleship reload time that the Utrecht has on her airstrikes is kind of nuts. And of course, if you have the special Dutch commander, the airstrike's even more insane, right? So the Utrecht, Well, I kind of mentioned it there in the Conqueror section, right? The Utrecht light cruiser, already great HE spammer, right? Then you give it the airstrikes to where on top of all that, it can carpet bomb you, probably set more than a few fires because the bombers have a pretty darn good fire chance, right? So now it can HE spam you. It's going to set you on fire with your bombers, and it can do this while sitting behind an island, not even with good enough arcs to fire its main battery guns. The reload time on those airstrikes are good enough to sit behind an island and just carpet bomb anything within 14 kilometers of it, because it has a kilometer more range than the Golden Lose airstrikes with a shorter reload time. So that's a little absurd there. Like, you can easily, without even firing the main battery guns on the Utrecht, have like a 100k game in it if you're decent with prediction with the airstrikes and good with getting into the right position. That's a little nuts, right? So it can do that before we even talk about the guns, which, it's the German 128mm main battery guns, well, secondary guns that are now main battery guns. And I think a couple of the German destroyers, of course, have them as well. So you've got those excellent guns with their 32mm penetration capability with the HE shells, and you still have the decent, well, not decent, actually pretty darn good AP on top of that as well. Like, the Utrecht itself is a really good light cruiser before you even start to think about giving it an airstrike. Now, it does lack a little bit of utility there, but with how good this ship is right now, running into, at tier 10, I can maybe go like a game before there's an Utrecht on the other side, or on my side, right? Because it's everywhere right now, because it is still the newest tech line tier 10 in game, and it's just so painful playing against multiple of these on the enemy side, especially if they both go to your flank, because of course they're probably going to coordinate their drops. You're going to constantly be on fire, and then of course they're going to bring their main battery guns into the fight when they can, and now you have to deal with the constant carpet bombing on top of the HE spam. So, it's still new. It can still probably get changed. I'm not saying it necessarily needs to get nerfed, just that, man, it's a really powerful ability to sit 14 kilometers away, never have to risk getting spotted because the airstrikes do not cause your detection range to go up or anything like that. So that's just kind of hella annoying when you're trying to play against them and really anything. So yeah, I'm not saying it needs to be nerfed or anything like that, but very frustrating where it's at the moment, again, with the ship being so popular and so many of them popping up in game. I don't really think the popularity would die down too much like when the next tech line comes out, because again, it is like legitimately a very good light cruiser. But yeah, that's the Utrecht. Moving on, number 2, we have the tier 9 Pan-American battleship, the Valparaiso. This ship, honestly, is just so stupid. Like, it's fun to play, don't get me wrong. I love brawling, I love secondary brawling battleships, but I'm sorry, this ship is stupid. The ability to simply keep pounding super heals like it's fentanyl and ignoring the pain is just so dumb. And the fact that, there are some pretty good balancing factors baked into the ship, but the simple fact of the matter is, as long as this thing's secondary guns are firing, it's so hard to kill. You have to either absolutely dev strike it, which, given the maneuverability of the Valparaiso, probably not going to happen if the commander has more than a slightly above average IQ. But like, the fact that this thing can walk at, I have walked at, you guys have seen on stream, you guys have seen other content creators around the Warship sphere simply walk at teams and not die because you can just keep pounding the heals. You get 8 super heals with this thing if you take the commander skill, right? Which is just completely absurd that this ship is this tough. Now, granted, it does only have, the 8 15-inch guns with not great accuracy, but improved pin angles. It does have the American 127s that, if you have Joachim, these things can get down to like a 1.4 second reload when his commander skill pops, which, like, Joachim really pushes the Valparaiso over the edge if you haven't ran against Valparaiso running Joachim, which most of them are, because you get the boost to your reload and secondary reload time when you get the was it 145 main and secondary battery hits, and then you get that buff to the combat instructions where you get the 25% fill on the bar permanently, which is, again, ridiculous, right? And you only need like 12 secondary hits from base to get the combat instructions up. They give you the 95% cooldown to your heal and your damage con. That's something too. You basically never run out of damage con in the Valparaiso because, again, as long as secondaries are firing, you're going to have that F button up constantly, so who cares, right? The ship is pretty stupid. It's really annoying to deal with when you are having to try and deal with it, because every other ship in the game, right, that has a heal, sure, there are some out there with some pretty fast cooldowns on their heal, but you have a window in there to where it's like, if you dogpile them, they will perish. But the amount of dogpiling that's required to sink a Valparaiso when he still has his heals, it's crazy. Now, of course, it does have the Vanguard Citadel, so it is very much exposed Citadel. It doesn't have HE besides the secondary guns, but it's still ridiculous what this ship can do. So that's why it's here at number 2 on this list. Will it be nerfed? Probably so, if I had to guess. Will it be nerfed hard enough? Probably not, because, well, it's the new thing on the block, right? But Wargaming does like to wait for like 4-ish months to see if they're to see the data and stuff and decide if they're going to make changes. So I guess we'll see here in a couple more months what happens with the Valparaiso. But anyway, on to number 1. We have the Tier 10 American submarine, the Archerfish. So yeah, the Archerfish. Submarines already very frustrating to deal with. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. The tools they gave you to deal with them are not really up to the task in a lot of cases, and the Archerfish is definitely one of those cases. So the Archerfish, man, if you build this thing right, this thing's probably on the same level of absurdity as the Valparaiso, because this thing's just so fast on the surface and at periscope depth when you have the proper build. You have all the commander skills to boost the top speed and stuff, and you have the engine boost going. This is a submarine that can rock and roll well over 30 knots at the surface and just keep spamming her torpedoes left, right, and center, because very much like the Valparaiso, the Archerfish does have a funny button. A funny button that's actually automatically activated when you get a couple of torpedo hits or basically someone shoots at you. The threshold is so low for these combat instructions, it's redonkulous. So they automatically pop, giving you a boost to your torpedo reload time instantly, just to allow you to keep spamming torpedoes. Keep in mind, too, that, like, submarines already, for the most part, have a very short torpedo reload time, because that is, their only source of damage in like 98% of cases. I believe the Valparaiso, the Seal, and the I-56, and I think one other submarine do have, player control. Oh, the Thrasher has a player controllable guns, right? So you technically can use the deck gun to do damage, but obviously most players don't do that. But yeah. So understandably, they do have a faster than normal torpedo reload time. But of course, with the reload boost the Archerfish gets, that's a little nuts. So this ship can and often is just sitting at periscope depth, running absolute loops and laps around the enemy team, and the ping indicator is so far off for normal submarines that trying to deal with an Archerfish that's not spotted is an absolute pain, because of how fast the thing is. Keep in mind, this thing's at the periscope depth to where it can spot you, where it's barely detectable. It's like, 2.2 kilometers at periscope depth, something ridiculous like that. So you're not really going to be able to spot it unless you have a destroyer that manages to stumble across it. And it's just doing laps around you at 30 knots. It's in turns, pulling. I think it'll do like 29, 28 knots in a turn, something like that, when you got the engine boost going, which is ridiculous. Again, trying to use the ping indicator that's very much not up to the task to try and figure out where the hell this guy is going. At least with like the 4501, this German sub that does like 40 knots underwater, that thing's got to go in a straight line at least. So you can kind of guess where he's going to go. If he's going to try and use his speed to outrun your depth charge, you can kind of compensate for it. And if the 4501 like sneezes on the A or D key, it's back down doing 20 knots. Not with the Archerfish when it's got its engine boost up and running. So it's it is the most annoying submarine in the game, in my opinion, to try and deal with, especially, of course, if you get a good captain driving it. So it's absurd. It's been out for some time. It's a still ship, so Wargaming might be a little hesitant to nerf it, especially with how much they changed it during testing and such. But thankfully, it is a still ship, so you don't see it too much, which means that when you do see it, whoever has it You know, they spent however long it took them to get all that still. They got the Archfish now. They probably played the hell out of it. So just be very, very cognizant when you see one of these guys pop up on the enemy team, because yes, in my opinion, it's the most annoying ship to play against at this moment. So guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What are your top 5 most annoying ships to play against? Let me know all that and more in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.